correlation between students' mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout the last year, the world has had to fight one of the toughest battles against a deadly virus. This pandemic has challenged every government, community, and demographic to adapt to a different way of life. Students and faculty members, especially, have had to find various ways of coping with the difficulties of this pandemic. The concept of school is completely antithetical to what it was before March of 2020. Students are less prepared, involved, and interested in their education, and this is a crucial issue for the fate of our society. According to recent studies, the COVID-19 pandemic has sustained exponential growth in students' mental health complications, as well as caused students' viewpoint on education to be impaired. This could become a looming complexity for this generation of students' futures. This increased evidence of mental health complications not only affected elementary level students, but those who are continuing their education to a higher level. In the article, COVID-19 and Children, Has the Pandemic Caused Lasting Damage? Chandra White Cummings writes that a national survey of more than 200,000 K-12 students by Youth Truth, a nonprofit organization that polls students, found that 49% of respondents said their top obstacle to learning during the pandemic has been feeling depressed, stressed, or anxious. The survey revealed that stress, anxiety, and depression rates were far higher for girls than for boys. This is due to the simple fact that boys tend to hide their feelings. Substance in this is that the students are finding their mental state more of an impediment to learning than the switch of their learning environment being in school to staying at home. Another element that many people are forgetful of is that many students do not have access to their own electronic devices at home. This prohibits them from interacting with their teacher and gaining an education remotely. A statistic from Adapting Educational Practices in Emergency Remote Education, Continuity and Change from a Student Perspective, Montedelfino states, specific case of Italy. National statistics have shown that 12.3% of 6 to 17-year-old children do not have access to a computer or tablet at home, while only 6.1% of the children live in a family context where each family member has their own device. The percentages of those who do not have access to a computer or tablet at home are a little more than double to those that do. Students were missing out on their education because of their lack of technological resources from their homes. A similar study came out from the U.S. that stated 19% of fourth graders either had no access to the internet or a device. Those who did not have access to the technology to obtain their education remotely were no better than those who did not have access. That statement may sound outlandish, but according to White Cummings, the CDC found that 25% of parents whose children receive full-time virtual instruction said their child demonstrated a decline in their mental or emotional health. 82% of the parents also said their kids were socially isolated because of less in-person time with their friends. This statistic illustrates and emphasizes the concern that students' mental health is suffering from attaining their education behind a screen. A quote from Marcella Willis, a high school senior in Virginia Beach, says, "I don't want to go back to Zoom. It's exhausting. Or to not seeing my friends," Marcella says. "It's scary." Students across the country are all feeling this way, especially after not being able to see their friends for the remainder of the 2020 school year. Now, heading into a second year of this, it could be seen as daunting. She uses the word exhausting, which demonstrates how mentally taxing learning from home could be. At the start of the pandemic, students were forced to learn and receive their education from their homes. Students in impoverished communities were seen to be more susceptible to contracting COVID, therefore preventing them from going back to in-person learning. The article, Disparities in Learning Mode Access Among K-12 Students During the COVID-19 Pandemic, introduced this point, stating, further, rates of COVID-19 hospitalization and mortality have been higher in communities of color, and districts serving a larger share of these students might have faced more significant public health challenges as they made decisions about reopening schools. The children within these communities are prevented from going back to in-person learning and forced to stay in a remote environment. This plays along with the students' mental health deteriorating because schools do not know when their students can return. However, many might propose the argument that procuring one's education from a remote standpoint could be a positive. A quotation from the article, There's No Virtual Learning, The Materiality of Digital Education, Leslie Gourlay states, that is essentially a material and embodied practice. In this regard, it could be argued that the purportedly rarefied and disembodied world of online learning, in a certain respect, does not take place online at all, but is always and entirely socio-materiality situated. Sociomateriality is the theory that technology, work, and organization are all entangled in everyday life. Gourlay believes that students are becoming more keen in how they are utilizing technology, therefore adjusting into the socio-materiality way of life. Although the world may be assimilating into this socio-materiality age, the students who are participating in their education from home benefit a lot more from completing their education in person. The year 2021 has shown the highest rates of stress, anxiety, and depression among students, which supports my initial claim. The pandemic has increased the rate at which students are experiencing mental health issues, thus causing students' perspective on education to be clouded. This could become an imminent complication for this generation of students, and the mental stability of the students has dropped drastically over the past year due to the lack of time spent with friends, receiving an education from home, or not being able to return to school due to the COVID rates within your community. The students' mental health and well-being should be prioritized over all aspects of their education when discussing how they should be instructed.